friends! Yesterday we read Snow White and Rose Red in our big book about kindness. Good readers read stories more than once to help them understand the story and characters better because when we read a story more than once, it helps our brains pick up on more details. So today we're going to read Snow White and Rose Red again. This is the front cover, the back cover, and the title. The title of this book is Let's Be Kind, and this is the spine. Now, remember, this big book is special because it doesn't just have one story, it has a whole bunch of stories. And when I open it up, I see the title page. That's just to remind you of the title in case you forgot. And when I turn the page again, I see a special place called the Table of Contents. The table of contents tells you where to find things. Remember, our story is called Snow White and Rose Red. And when I move my finger across the page, I see it's on page 24. So I'm going to go ahead and turn to page 24. And there it is, Snow White and Rose Red. This is the title, the author, and the illustrator. Remember, the author writes the words and the illustrator draws the pictures in the story, and those pictures are connected to the words on the page. Since this is the second time we are reading the story, we will be doing a close read. That means we will be taking a closer look at our story. Our focus this time is cause and effect. Good readers look more closely at why something happened in a story to better understand story events. Remember, a cause is why something happens and an effect is what happens. As we read, we should ask ourselves why or how things happen. We will also be looking at strategies the author uses so we can learn to be better writers. The story element we will focus on today is plot. Authors write the events of the story to create a beginning, middle, and end. When readers and writers understand the plot, they identify a beginning problem, look for action as characters try to solve the problem in the middle, and then find out how the problem was solved in the end. All right, friends, let's get ready to read our story. Essential question. When is it important to show kindness? Snow White and Rose Red. There once was a woman who lived in a cottage with her two kind and cheerful children, Snow White and Rose Red. The girls often ran about the forest and gathered berries. The hare would eat out of their hands. The stag leapt merrily by them, and the birds sat upon the tree branches and sang. One evening, as the family sat together, someone knocked at the door. "Quick, Rose Red, open the door. It might be a traveler seeking shelter," said the mother. Rose Red went and pulled open the door. It was a giant bear. He stretched his broad brown head through the doorway. An author plans out a story to have a beginning, middle, and an ending. Good readers look for a problem introduced at the beginning of a story. After reading the first few pages of this story, let's think about the problem. We learn that Snow White and Rose Red live with their mother in a cottage in the woods. They are cheerful and kind girls. When they heard a knock at the door, they expected to see a tired stranger. So when they opened the door and saw a large bear, they were surprised and frightened. That seems to be the problem at the beginning of the story. Rose Red sprang back. "Do not be afraid, I will do you no harm," said the bear. "I am half frozen and only want to warm myself by your fire." "Poor bear," said the mother. "You may rest here by the hearth. You will be safe from the cold weather." In the morning, the children opened the door. The bear trotted out across the snow into the forest. The bear returned every evening at the same time and sat himself down by the hearth. The family came to expect their visitor each night. They kept a warm blanket ready for him and saved some of their dinner. They never locked the door until after their friend arrived. Spring finally came. "Thank you," said the bear. "You have been so kind, but I must go into the forest and find my treasure. The dwarf who stole it lives below the frozen ground during the winter. Now, as the sun warms the earth, he comes out to steal again." By looking closely for causes and effects in this story, we can better understand the reasons that cause things to happen. When we ask, "Why does the bear have to find his treasure?" we are looking for the cause or reason. The dwarf stole the bear's treasure. The bear wants his treasure back. The effect, "the bear leaves to find his treasure," tells what happened. Snow White sadly unbolted the door. As the bear hurried out, he caught against the bolt, and a piece of his furry coat tore off. For a moment, Snow White thought she saw gold shining through it. A short time later, the mother sent her children into the forest to collect firewood. There, they found a big tree lying on the ground. Near the trunk, something jumped back and forth in the grass, but they could not make out what it was. As they came closer, they saw a dwarf with an old withered face and a long white beard. He had snagged the end of his beard between the twisted roots of the tree. The little fellow jumped about, not knowing what to do. As I read about the dwarf, I look for causes and effects to understand why he doesn't know what to do. The dwarf jumped about because his beard was stuck on the tree roots. First, I look at what happened. The little fellow jumped about. Then, I look for the cause, the reason why he is jumping about. He caught his beard between the tree roots and he was stuck. He glared and cried, "Why do you stand there? Come over here and help me." The children tried very hard, but they could not pull the beard free. "You are useless," roared the dwarf. Then Snow White cut off the end of the beard. The dwarf grabbed a bag full of gold nearby. As he lifted it up, he grumbled to himself, "Rude girls cut off a piece of my fine beard. Bad luck to you both." And then he swung the bag upon his back and went off. Later, the mother sent her 2 daughters to town. The road led them across a field where they noticed a large bird hovering in the air. It sank lower and lower. "Ah, help me!" came a loud cry. They ran up and saw that the bird had snatched the dwarf. The children grabbed the little man and pulled until the bird let him go. The dwarf cried, "You could have done that more carefully. You tore my coat." Then he took up the bag of gold and slipped away into his hole. The girls, used to his rudeness, went on their way. On their way home, they surprised the dwarf, who had emptied out his bag of gold. The children stood still and stared at the treasure. "Why are you staring?" shouted the dwarf accusingly. His face became crimson with rage. Just then, a bear came trotting toward them. The dwarf cried, "Dear Mr. Bear, spare me! I will give you my treasure." The dwarf scurried away while the bear began to gather the gold. The frightened girls began to run away. The bear called to them, "Snow White and Rose Red, do not be afraid." They recognized the voice of their bear friend. Suddenly, there stood a young man clothed in gold. "I am a prince," he said. "That dwarf changed me into a bear and then stole my treasure. I have had to live in the forest as a bear until I could get my treasure back." The prince was so grateful for their kindness, he shared his treasure with them. Good readers look for a beginning, a middle, and an end as they read. We have read the last part of the story. The story ends with Snow White and Rose Red's bear friend turning into a prince. The prince gave the girls part of his treasure as a thank you for their kindness to him over the winter. Yesterday, we looked at how stories can help us learn and understand new words. Let's look at some other new words. The word withered is a form of wither, which means to dry up. We're going to turn to page 33 and see what helps us understand that withered might mean wrinkled. Let's see. As they came closer, they saw a dwarf with an old, withered face and a long white beard. So I might look at the picture and look at his face and the words, and it says he had an old, withered face. That probably means wrinkled. Now let's look at another word also on this page. A fellow is a man or a boy. It's a guy. we're going to look at the last sentence and see what helps us understand that. The little fellow jumped about, not knowing what to do. Well, we know that the dwarf is a little man. It's a he. So when it says fellow, I know that fellow must mean man. Now, let's look at page 38 for the word accusingly. The word accusingly means in the manner of saying that someone has done something wrong. So if someone says something accusingly, they might say, you did this. And that tells you that they mean that they're accusing you. They're saying you did it wrong. And let's see what helps us understand that. All right. The children stood still and stared at the treasure. Why are you staring? Shouted the dwarf accusingly. So the dwarf shouts at Rose Red and Snow White for staring at the stones at his treasure. He says it in a way that tells us he thinks that it's wrong for Rose Red and Snow White to stare at the sparkling treasure. I really enjoyed reading Snow White and Rose Red again with you today. I can't wait to talk more about it in our pods. Do your best to hold all those important ideas in your brain, and I'll see you later.